Seacon, and he will give us a legal update.
Good morning. The hottest topic, which you probably have had 65 emails probably this morning on, and in addition to for the last couple of days, couple of weeks, is Almaraz. Have to use the microphone. The hottest topic is Almaraz Guzman 2 and Ogilvy 2. And there's lots of talk on it. Dr. Feinberg, who is here, has come out with at least 3 emails where he had one topic and then he revised it twice, came out with another one this morning. And all of the major law firms and all of the non-major law firms are holding seminars galore, and everybody's talking about it. Well, what I wanted to do this morning was to give you a kind of simplistic Almaraz Guzman, because you can jump from here 7 feet and get into technicalities that will put most people to sleep in less than 5 minutes. But I wanted to try to just give you simple Almaraz Guzman Ogilvy so that you can use that as a foundation for some of the harder questions that are to come. And I've asked this table, which I'm going to interrupt eating, to help me with this presentation. So, everybody knows how a rating is created, how we get a permanent disability rating. But it's important to look at the elements, because that's going to be part of the key to this new analysis. And the first thing we start off with is an injury. Now that sort of like goes, oh yeah, all right. But you have to describe the injury, and you have to come up with the exact 8-digit code to come up with that injury. So we're going to ask, give the whole injury. Just sit there, okay? The next thing that is going to happen is we're going to have a whole person impairment. And that's an important language for us to start using, because a lot of people, a lot of applicant attorneys, a lot of people like to try to confuse this number with the permanent disability. But as you'll see, it's not. Whole person impairment comes from the permanent stationary report, a PQME report, or an A&E report. It doesn't come from any other place. So the second part of the rating is the whole person impairment. The third part of our rating is something which we call, which was brand new in 2005, was called the diminished future earning capacity. And that's that little thing, that's that number from 1 to 8 that goes in the bracket that you might have seen. And that has a formula that got to it, and the RAND study did a whole bunch of work, and the administrative director created from that RAND study, through her analysis, this DFEC number. This has become the enemy of the applicant attorney. So we're going to ask you to hold DFEC. Now, the next thing, we've had this for a long time. It's called occupation code. Every once in a while we fight about this. Oh no, the person should be at 340. Oh no, they're really at 220. Oh no, they lift more than 10 pounds, so therefore they're really not a 110, but they're a 210. Occupation code. That usually can be determined best by a DPU rater who looks through the book and makes the analogies, or by a rating service. So the next thing is occupation code. The final thing is something that we all fear, age. It's there. When were you born? I was born on this date. What was the date of the accident? Subtract the 2, you get the age. Now, if it was a cumulative trauma, what was the date of the injury? Well, on one day I'm 41, on one day I'm 39. That could cause differences in ratings. So sometimes there's a contest about age, but usually very rarely. So the next thing is age. And the final thing is the magic number, permanent disability rating. That's the important number that we add for the dollars and the weeks. That's what we're all looking for. So the final thing is interrupted salad, permanent disability rating. So as you can see, all 5 of these elements create permanent disability rating. The important part of all this is what did Alvarez-Guzman 1 say? Well, what Alvarez-Guzman 1 said was that if the permanent disability rating is inequitable, disproportionate, and not a fair and accurate measure of the employee's permanent disability rating, then you could rebut the schedule. So what they were saying is, if this isn't fair and adequate, we could rebut the schedule. So what Alvarez-Guzman 2 said, they said, no, we made a mistake. They didn't really say we made a mistake, but they said, we reject that. Well, they created it, so it must have been a mistake. But that's beside the point. What they did say, though, was the entire schedule is rebuttable because the statute says the schedule is prima facie evidence. And that's a fancy word to mean that it's not conclusive, that you can bring in evidence to rebut it. So that's the first thing. The second thing they said, and now I almost forgot, was that the person who wants to rebut the schedule has the burden of proof. And how do you rebut the schedule? Well, the way you rebut the schedule is you have a contest or you have a concern or an issue with each one of these 5 people individually. Okay? You can't contest her at all unless you contest one of these 5. So that she is the total of what the 5 are, but she can't be 5 because it's fair and inequitable. So what did they say? And everybody else can put it on the signs except injured whole person impairment and future incapacity. What they said was, well, you can rebut the schedule because of the whole person impairment. How can you do that? Well, the first thing is we now have, and I don't mean to offend anyone's religion, we have now a brand new Bible in workers' compensation, and it's called the AMA Guides. That is the document that determines what the whole person impairment is. The doctor needs to evaluate the patient, look at the book, and find some places in that 4 corners of the book to describe the whole person impairment. That's a blessing and a curse. Sort of like the Bible. That's a blessing.